Hi, welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert.
And Ryan.
So today we are going to be doing a movie comparison of the recently released Pixar's Soul, and we are going to compare it with my brother's choice here.
Inside Out primarily, and we're also going to delve into Coco because, like anybody who's talked about this movie, the comparisons are very similar, particularly between Soul and Inside Out, both directed by Pete Docter, a notable Pixar director, director of Monsters Inc. as well. And so, yeah, let's just jump into it.
Yeah. So one thing I think about these shows, and I actually maybe learned this in movie making from a YouTube channel I like to watch, Filmento. Shout out to Filmento, and go check him out on YouTube. And I think these shows they're prime examples of how to do concept well, right? So we can see that the concept of not only Soul but Coco is death, or that's something that they're really working around. It's very integral. I think death in Coco is more treated to by memory and the thoughts about somebody, but with Soul, it's more about the appreciation for life or the life lived, sort of, and how that relates to death.
So, I want to start with first impressions.
First impressions.
Overall, what's your take on Soul?
Yeah, so my take on Soul, thought it was pretty good, but kind of got away from me a little bit. And just the story, I don't know, like something about what they were doing wasn't very solid. I mean, the kind of weird depiction of the beings, I guess, I can't remember what they were called, the beings from the things that manage the new souls and all that. I can't remember what they're called.
Terries?
Yeah, the Terries.
Or Jerrys.
The Terries or the Jerrys, yeah. And but the fact that, I mean, like, there's some sort of instance of the universe, they just occur like that, and that's why they're supposed to be two-dimensional, and they don't like make perfect sense because it's just a perception of them somehow. It's, I don't know, that all seemed a little strange. Overall, I mean, the movie was pretty good, and it teaches a decent lesson, I think, but it just, in some ways, it didn't hit me
perfectly. If you had to assign a 10 score, a letter grade,
I'll probably give, I mean, and this is not meaning to make less of Soul, because I still think it's a pretty solid movie. Very well animated, I will say that. Like, definitely, yes. Obviously, the newest Pixar movie to come out, the animation is excellent. But probably like a 5, really.
Oh, wow. I think you had told me, I think before you had told me like a 7. So yeah, that is a hot take. What would you grade Inside Out or Coco?
Coco's gotta be probably like a 9.5. I mean, it's hard. It's always hard to award a 10 because it's like, how do you say a movie's flawless, right? Coco maybe is flawless, actually. It's probably got as good of a story as you can imagine. Everything just works. So maybe a 10, like 9.5, just to give myself a little room for doubt. And Inside Out, I would say I would give that a 9 too, because I think story and everything works. There's just something about like that Inside Out. It's apparently the things that rule our mind are joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear. I don't know why disgust is even one of them. Like,
that is a, we can get into that, but disgust is an actual. It is a primal.
Is it okay? Yeah. Maybe that's something I just not aware of. But at first I was like, I don't know why that's a base thing that rules your emotions, but maybe it is. So,
but yeah. So for contrast, for me, I would probably award Soul about an 8.5, but I'd say like Coco's like 9.75, and Inside Out is probably, while I like Coco more, and neither movie is my all-time favorite Pixar movie, Coco and Inside Out are like my 2 and 3. Inside Out, I would probably say is a 10 out of 10 movie. And having just rewatched it last night, I didn't really have any part of that movie that I did not love.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I had to get a refresher on it. I watched it one time and recall it being pretty good, but when we both watched it last night together, I was like, holy crap, this is a great movie, honestly. So
Yeah.
the only reason again, maybe my ranking is not perfect here, but I give it a 9 just because I think there's just some things in Inside Out that don't track super well to me or something. And there's really what it is that me overall in any movie, things that are like more cutesy sort of feeling don't appeal to me quite as much. It's just not something I vibrate with a little bit or whatever you want to say. And so Inside Out being very like, it looks more like a kid's movie almost. And so that just loses me a little bit. That doesn't mean anything less about the actual story. It's amazing. Like it's teaching a great lesson. I think every kid should watch it. But that's why Coco even is certainly for kids, but it follows a somewhat more mature storyline. So I think that appeals to me a little more.
All right. Now, getting into the discussion as a whole, we're not going to do full like lengthy recaps, but I am going to try to give a summary of each of the movies. And so spoilers are going to be addressed, but we'll get to the spoiler stuff. We'll try to save that for later on, and we'll try to mark when we get to that. But let's start with Soul. So in Soul we see
spoiler warnings. So
yeah. In Soul we see this music teacher character voiced by Jamie Foxx. He has this passion for jazz, and all his life he's just wanted to be a jazz musician like his father, but he's just working as a substitute music teacher until one day he gets a full-time job as a music teacher, but that's not what he wants. But he gets a call from one of his former students, and he, on the same day, gets the opportunity of a lifetime. He gets to go play with a jazz musician in the city, and he's so excited, and he's gonna do it. He's finally gonna live his dream, and then he dies.
Yeah. And then the movie starts.
Yeah, and we see him. We see. This is we see him on the sort of, it's like an escalator into the afterlife.
Yeah. It's not even the afterlife, it's the end of life somehow. It's just like a giant white hole of oblivion.
They do not take the time to decide what is afterlife. Really, this movie more focuses on pre-life and life itself. We never get to see what afterlife is in this movie, which is maybe the biggest contrast between it and Coco.
Yeah, I think that's being respectful of the fact that, I mean, there's so many faiths and who knows what the afterlife truly is. So I think it's allowing that open to being, it is whatever it's supposed to be.
But for whatever reason, this man's soul is, unlike any other soul, is able to pierce through and gets into this this pre-life world where we see all of the I can't remember what they're called, like the things, the souls before they
souls.
Souls.
It's a soul. Yeah.
Souls being built and basically being trained to become real people, and they just need to get, after they're given all the traits of personality, all they need is a spark of life. And in order to get these sparks of life, we have mentors, and
some souls don't need mentors. Some of them just go pick up a bow and arrow. It shows bow and arrow, or they throw a ball and they love it, and their spark of life is baseball or something like that. And really, they're not even necessarily trained. They're just like, hey, you soul, walk over there into that little area, and it's going to make part of your personality being frightful or excited or something like that, dopey. So
Jamie Foxx's character, I'm gonna try to find the actual character names for this. It's gonna make it a lot easier. So Jamie Foxx plays Joe. He comes across the soul 22, voiced by Tina Fey,
who we can literally assume, because all the souls are apparently numbered, and most of the ones you hear are literally like
the 22nd soul ever.
Yeah, it's the 22nd soul ever. So she's been there since apparently the beginning, and it's referenced that essentially 22's had every great mentor you can imagine. Every significant person on the planet that's died has mentored her at some point.
And none of them could get through to her. She doesn't want to be alive, but she is willing to help Joe hit himself back to life if he helps her to stay not alive. And so through kind of weird circumstances, they get brought back to life.
We'll let you watch the movie to find that out.
And there's a bit of a body swap comedy to the movie.
Yeah.
Eventually the morals that the strong theming we get from the movie is to really enjoy life. We see that the day-to-day living of life is something worth living for. Like even if you're not fulfilling what you think is some grand life purpose, it's the little things in life. And I think that's really what the movie tries to get at as a whole. It's really not a movie about death. It's a movie about life. And so in the end, okay, we're gonna save some of the in the end stuff, but basically the general gist of the movie is about that spark of life, what life is worth living for, and of course, jazz.
Yeah. So I think at this point, I mean, we can jump into comparison, right? I don't know if Inside Out and Coco need. I mean, Soul's relatively new, so that's somewhat of a summary if you haven't already seen it. But
broad gestures. Inside Out, it tells the story of a little girl.
It's about a little girl and her emotions.
Yeah, and specifically the emotions going from that of a child to her emotions being able to mature. And it also is a story about dealing with sadness, and it's really a story about allowing yourself to be sad. And Coco is a story about family and death
and remembering those you love and how they can live in your heart,
and also about music. There's another tie-in. Soul is very music driven. It's a score by Trent Reznor, original compositions by John Baptiste of Stay Human and Stephen Colbert's The Late Show fame. And so like Soul really kind of has everything going for it. It's got the director of Inside Out. It's so beautifully animated at times. Like you just think it's the real world. Like even when you're seeing like these clear Pixar characters, the texture on their face, the hair, it's just so stunning sometimes. But it just felt like sometimes it would just feel a little hollow.
Yeah, no. So I would definitely agree with that in one sense. And I agree. I think it's really well animated, and it's, again, it, like Marilla said, it has everything going for it, but it's just, there's something that doesn't hit quite a note, which is why I like to jump into concept. So Soul, Inside Out, and Coco, concept. I already touched on this a little bit earlier in the podcast. Again, this is really the meat of the conversation here to me. So I got a little jumpy and wanted to get into it immediately. But Soul, about death, but also really about life and appreciation of life. Inside Out, about emotions and that growing up and dealing with those things. These are the concepts that we see through the film and what kind of rule them, right? And Coco, obviously, also about death, but sort of in a different way than Soul. I think this is the heart of maybe why, in my opinion, I don't like Soul as much. Again, I think it is a good movie. Maybe 5 out of 10 is harsh on me, but it just doesn't. I don't think it really hits its mark very well. I think essentially, Inside Out, from day one in the movie, right at the beginning, it's Soul. It's not Soul. It's emotion. It's joy. Like, she is the one that's literally narrating. She's the first thing we see, and we're with her the whole way through. And we see how emotion is taking this girl through her life and how it rules certain aspects, and how they characterize these emotions as people that we can relate to somewhat, but it still relates to real life, and how everything that happens to the girl, even though inside her head it's like, oh, they're just hitting buttons and they're clicking in light bulbs and they're doing all these things and they're popping memories up, but it seems you could believe what it's saying, that there's some little guys running in your head and this is how they're responding to situations sometimes. That sometimes when you blank on something you don't remember, it's literally like they can't find the memory ball inside your head. And so that concept just stays really steady the whole way through and has this excellent story that follows through it.
And then the concept of Coco is very much like built into real like cultural lore of what after death looks like. The death and the second death, the way the afterlife is treated through the Dia de los Muertos. Like you can't fault the logic of Coco because it's grounded in real spiritual beliefs of people, whereas Soul takes an afterlife approach that's like almost so it's almost just like why not it be like this? It's so reticent to not take real life examples of an afterlife, because it's not quite an afterlife, that it becomes like almost like false to me.
Yeah. And so here's a couple little things about Soul. And I might touch on other ones as I go, but one thing that jumped out right when he said that was so our man Joe, he dies. He's on this bridge and it's going towards the forever. And he sees like two little grandma souls that are like, "Oh, I'm ready to go on to the next place," and all that. And he says, "No, I'm not ready." And he starts running backwards on the thing. It's slowly kind of getting closer, but he's running past all these people that are all souls that are ready to die as well. And you're seeing some of them that look like older people, but you're also seeing some that don't. So some that are maybe, died from a different thing in earlier ages. So people that are maybe in a similar position of Joe, right? Someone else that died maybe before their time or something like that. But somehow Joe has a sentience to say, well, it's not my time. And he wants to escape it and literally just tries to jump off the bridge. There's a force field, and all he has to do is just kind of force his way through, and then he falls into the pre-soul life.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting that you wanted to tackle this concept first. I want to take this as a chance to try to delve more into where I think one of the major issues of the movie is, and that's a character. And it's not even that Joe as a character is bad or anything. I think Jamie Foxx does a good job bringing this person to life. I believe he's a real person. It's just that I don't understand why he is treated so special throughout this movie. Okay, let's take Joy and Miguel as counterpoints. Joy, like her one motivation, we know her one motivation, it's to make Riley happy, and everything she does is trying to make Riley happy. And we as an audience can be like, you know what, I want Riley to be happy, so Joy must be right. So when she makes mistakes and does things incorrectly, you always know she's coming from a good place. Again, Miguel, he just wants to follow his life's passion. He just wants to make music. And we as an audience can very easily just be like, you know what? I love music. His family's wrong. Let him learn music. Let him go meet his hero, Hector de la Cruz.
Hector de la Cruz.
Let Miguel have his passion. So like, even when he does, like, these two characters are just so driven by something that you can agree with. And Joe, again, he's driven by wanting to play jazz music. But here's the thing. He's playing jazz music before he gets his big break. And when we get to the part of the movie where he gets to play jazz music on stage, he's just like, yeah, okay. And I think the movie's kind of smart in playing that what he thought he wanted wasn't what he wanted, in a similar way that Joy wanting to make Riley happy and never wanting her to be sad, that's where she was getting it wrong. They try to play a similar thing with Joe wanting to play music but not realizing the little music of life. It's not quite that, but it's kind of.
I see what you're saying. I mean, in the movie Soul, Joe essentially he literally says the words, "My life just started," like the day that he hit that big break, and he kind of makes the illusions and says words and things that give the idea that like before that big break, his life just didn't matter. Nothing was really that big a deal or important. And now it's finally good. Now it's finally, and it makes a point that most people have where they're always waiting for some sort of special thing to happen when it's you're letting life pass you by. Like, you've been living life. Like, there have been happy, good moments in life that were worth living.
And yeah, that's very relatable. Like, I get this guy. Like, I
Yeah.
I think I felt like that guy before. But the fact that he is like what is he, 30, 40 something?
He's got to be late 30s,
if not in his 40s. What makes this guy so special that he is able to pierce the fucking veil of life and in his 40 years of music career before, he never got found out, and then this one day he got found. And I just don't it's just hard for me to this guy's simultaneously a nobody everyman and also a musical prodigy just waiting for somebody to notice him. And I just don't.
They tackle too much. They're kind of giving him a little too much in that.
Why
can he break the rules?
Yes, that's sort of the core of it that I personally can't get past. That, like, if he was the person that broke through this one time, but like in the end he still has to handle his death, that's one thing. And this is where I'm going to get into the spoiler, because I can't talk about this movie without talking about this, because it's my biggest flaw with the movie. It dropped my grading of it down a full point. At the end of the movie, the Jerrys decide that he did such a good job with being a mentor. Yeah, that they're just going to let him be alive again. And I recognize that that's the point of the movie. Like, if he were to die, then he didn't get to learn his lesson and live his life. But I just feel like it's so cheap and hollow. Like, it's almost like, why did he have this experience to begin with? Like, because had he not gone through this whole process, he would have gone on stage, had his performance, and maybe be a little underwhelmed, but he finally would have gotten what he wanted, and maybe he would have learned a similar lesson. But I don't know. It's just, okay, I want you to step in, because you're a lot harsher on this movie than me. I want to know if your issue with the movie is similar to mine.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that rings true. In that, the fact that there's no finality essentially to what happened in the end. So before he is allowed to come back to life, he basically accepts that the whole point was that he takes 22, and they wanted to get 22's spark, and using 22's spark, they were going to essentially use his spark. Once she gets the spark, then her thing becomes complete. She has a little pass that lets her go back to Earth. So Joe wants to get that little pass and go back to Earth. He wants to take it from her, and she says, "Yeah, take it from me, so I don't ever have to go." That's the whole point here. And then through them living the life, she realizes that's her spark of life. Is living life made her want to live life. Again, the fact that he doesn't die in the end sort of robs a bit of finality from the movie. I mean, now, okay, I will say one small contrast. One reason why I trying to be on the movie side almost, that we could say maybe why is he special? Well, we see that when he does come back to life, he's laying on a hospital bed and he's not dead yet, right? So maybe there's something a little different for someone that's not quite dead, right? The people that are laying in hospital beds and they're on some kind of life support, maybe they do kind of get some room for a second chance.
Yeah, but I feel like it's heavily implied that he's a special case. He's the first person to do this.
Yes.
There are people lying on hospital beds all over the world.
Yeah, and to think, there have been billions of people that have passed and died in the history of humanity. And again, he's the first one. It just makes it a little strange. I mean, why is this the first time this has happened?
Can we talk about how his mom didn't know that he was in the hospital?
Yeah, exactly. It just makes the movie just kind of like forces us to accept a bunch of things, and it doesn't. I think it doesn't adhere to its concept very well, that life is to be appreciated, or it almost starts getting a little muddy. Like, is it more about the death or is it more about life being appreciated? If life was supposed to be appreciated, then Why did he just get to go? I mean, I guess maybe he got to go back so he could appreciate his life again.
Why does this person who so like clearly does not appreciate life, he had such a narrow focused view on the only thing good in life being music. Like, why is this person driven by this one thing? Why is he the special person that, you know what, I love life more than all of these people, when he himself had to learn the lesson of what life was worth living for? Because like before that, like talking to 22, he's just like, I don't know what your spark should be. Clearly it needs to be music. That's the spark. That's everything. And then he tries other things, but like his heart's never in anything else. Like for him, he's so narrowly focused on music being everything, and it's just hard for me to get past why him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then so again, it also comes into, so they bring some stuff into a little bit of question, I think. So again, the soul, he's taking the soul 22 to try and find her spark. If they can find her spark, then he gets her pass. That's how you get the pass as a soul to go to Earth. He wants the pass so he can go back to Earth, and then she doesn't ever have to, because you don't get another set of passes. Going through the when they're in they're living again in their little body swap, eventually she gets her spark of life, and it's from living life. The spark of life for her to want to live, and that's what the spark of life is. It's not your passion, it's what makes you want to be alive, as we find out near the end of the movie, is living life. Because she had that experience, it made her want to live. So in the end, she says, here's the past that you always wanted, I'll stay here. And he says, no, you finally found a passion for life, so you should go actually get to live your life now. And 22's, thank you so much. And she goes on to be born and live the life, I guess.
Yeah.
So during this time, there is this scene with a barber, and where Joe's getting a haircut because of the big performance while they're back in the body swap thing. And he gets his haircut, and the barber talks about how he says, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And 22 in Joe's body, which we alluded to body swap, 22 goes into Joe's body, Joe goes into a cat. yeah, whatever. Just how it happens, essentially. But so 22 in Joe's body says, well, then why'd you end up being a barber, right? If your passion, if your spark is being a veterinarian, then why'd you end up like this? And he just said, well, you do what you kind of have to. I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's basically like, yeah, it doesn't really matter that that's what he wanted to do. This is what he's doing now, and it helps him, and he's fine and happy doing it. Getting back to this point of like living your life, it's not okay if you don't do your passion, and maybe talking to Joe a little bit where, Joe, you didn't get to do your passion of playing jazz, but I mean, but it just, the whole thing just kind of, they say that, and then the fact that it's inconsistent about like, okay, so the spark isn't your passion, it's just what makes you want to be alive. Again, I don't know, maybe I'm rambling, maybe this doesn't make a ton of sense, maybe you see where I'm going. It's just, so things aren't totally consistent. It's not all, I don't really see how they tie everything perfectly back into wanting to live your life and how that makes it okay. Like, oh, your spark is this, but it's okay if you just do something else as long as you liked it.
So, okay, taking from this, I actually kind of want to get into one of the things about Soul that I haven't touched upon that I think I actually like about the movie, and that is Tina Fey as 22. I think I actually really like her. Again, it's one of those things where we can do the comparison to Inside Out. 22 is not entirely visually similar to Joy, but they have that sort of like wonky, not a person, little kitty, rounded shape body characters played by Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, like very obvious like connection between those two. 22 as a character, I liked 22. 22 was kind of the driving force of the movie, really. Before 22 becomes a character, we have Joe. Again, he feels real. He's just not something I relate to. 22 is actually interesting to me, and 22 kind of teaches Joe more than I feel like Joe teaches 22. 22 doesn't get mentored by Joe. 22 mentors herself just she just needed the chance to be able to experience life. She didn't understand life because she couldn't live it. She doesn't learn anything from Joe.
Yeah. So again, it just comes back to what's the point of Joe? Like, oh, almost. I mean, I gave you that.
But I suppose that it makes sense. The Joe's the protagonist that's supposed to learn, and 22 is the character that helps Joe to grow, very much so like Sadness, or I don't think Coco quite has that parallel. 22 is like the sort of Sadness character, even having a very similar arc to at some point Joe and Joy sort of pushing off that person to be selfish and do what they think is right, causing the other person to be spurned, and eventually them coming back having a very similar arc of like, no, I need you. You need to listen to me. Like, you were right all along. Yeah. Which, thinking about that, it makes Soul even a little bit more
similar to Inside Out.
Yeah, similar in a almost kind of lazy way. Like, 22 actually is remarkably similar to Sadness, but just with a little bit more personality. Like, I wanted to compare 22 to Joy, but 22 is more like Sadness. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're both semi-apathetic characters in the beginning that don't think life or something's worth it, kind of. But again, they are catalysts for change that need to happen in the main character, we could say, is life.
Yeah, in both movies, we don't quite understand how significant this character is, and more so, Joe and Joy don't quite understand how significant 22 and Sadness will be for their personal growth until they just experience it, and they understand that 22 sort of childlike innocence to the world helps Joe to recognize how important life is, and Sadness's ability, the need for Sadness to get past negative emotions allows for Joy to exist. So
yeah,
they follow similar arcs in that way. I just feel like it's a lot cleaner in Inside Out because it really is just that one. Inside Out really is that one theme. And another thing.
Yeah. Inside Out adheres to its concept of emotions and how they affect us and how important they all are, the range of them. Because by the end of Inside Out, the sort of the moral of the story is that all the emotions are important. Joy thinks no sadness as much. If we can have all joy every day, that's the best thing. And it shows, again, as a child, like moving into their teenage sort of years, growing as an adult, like real grown people have complex emotions. Things can make you angry and happy.
And they're complex personalities. That's why you see the destruction of her child personality islands.
Yeah, and then rebuilt, but then more complex ways.
And more of them.
Friendship comes back but with the anger says, oh, I like that new addition as friendly argumentation, right? Again, because that's a thing. You can be somewhat heated with a friend of yours, but it can be almost good. Having a discussion, that's just one little example.
When you're a kid, you feel one emotion at a time. When you're an adult, you can feel complex, complicated, nuanced emotions between sadness, joy, anger. But in order for that to work, you need your emotions to work together.
Work in concert.
Yeah. But and those are like higher level aspects around the core of joy and sadness. We get that it's just such a tight, clear theme. Sadness is important.
Sadness is important. Everybody needs to feel it, and it's okay to feel sadness so that you can move past things.
Like, the movie is complex enough that we get all of those layers into it. But if you took away one thing from the movie, is that it's okay to feel sad sometimes.
Yep.
If I were to take away one thing from Soul, I guess it is to enjoy the little things in life, but it does it in such a it gets there in such a convoluted way where the story before it didn't really lend to that theme, so much so that it kind of had to spell it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point, is that it just doesn't adhere to its concept all the way through. Maybe I want to give some credit to Soul. It's tackling a bigger thing. I mean, Soul is literally trying to do this, pre-Soul, literally about souls and death and life. And in the end, you do get it. You understand it's about, appreciate the little things in life, but it just doesn't. The whole movie, you're not exactly seeing it. And again, like Ryan just said, you have to spell it out. It has to be like made certain that everybody gets it by the end.
Another thing that I wanted to touch upon earlier is how I think, just thinking of Pixar movies in general, but especially in Inside Out and Coco, there is always some element of family being really important to the growth into characters. Like, family is incredibly important in Coco, and he takes his family for granted, but in a way it's his family that helps him through the movie and helps him at the end of it. Inside Out, like, part of the reason sadness is important is because Riley needs to be able to show her sadness to her parents before they can understand what's happening to her. Like, when she's angry, they just think she's angry. When she's
disgusted,
and
or
when she reacts in all these ways, they just think they don't understand. But it's not until she's able to just be sad that she's able to really connect with her family. And in this movie, the family is just so, Joe as a character just seems so resentful kind of his mom, like that it doesn't even feel earned when his mom drops what she's doing to make sure that he can be what he needs to be, because like he
not only seems resentful, but not appreciative of what she's saying. Now, he gives like a heartfelt sort of speech through 22 when he's in his body, saying to her how this is his passion and this is what he was meant for and all these things and yada yada, that kind of gets through to her. But her real point is that she lived, his dad is a famous musician, I believe a real named jazz musician that I can't quite recall at this moment. And she makes a point, like, when your father, even if he was great at jazz, what paid for him to be a musician all the time was this tailor shop. And all she wants for her son is to have a good a life and be able to afford what they're doing. She doesn't want him to have to struggle. And they had to struggle in the early part of her business. And she is doing well now because she worked so hard at her real job. And, being a musician is real and it's definitely worth doing. But her point is, she just wants her son. She wants what's best for him. She thinks she knows what's best for him. And he has to make the point, no, But in that sense, it's like, how are you 40 years old and you're not getting this from your mother? Like,
yeah, and
why haven't you already had this conversation with her?
And the clear point is, his father had his mother. He has his mother, and how long is his mother going to be there? And really, like, I think because it's a kids movie, like, it doesn't really touch upon the adult realness of Joe's situation. But like, at the end of the movie, we don't know what he decides to do, whether or not he's going to take that job or if he's just going to play shows. But I feel like what the arc should have been, and the arc set up, was he should have embraced being a teacher, because that's what he's like he's good at being a jazz musician, but like, being a teacher has so much more meaning to it, and like, it can actually keep him afloat. And he's changed. The character that gets him his audition with this female musician is one of his old students. And like, if not for him being a teacher, being such an effective teacher, that he made an impression on this kid, even as an adult, or this other kid that comes up and says, oh, I don't want to play this instrument anymore, it's not cool. But hey, look, I've been practicing and I'm really good at it. And you know what? I think I'm going to do this. Like, he has that real effect on characters. And like, I wish like it could have maybe the message be him accepting that it's not his purpose, but that's where his life should have taken him at this point. Cause it's clear, like, yeah, he can play good music. He had that one good show that once he got out of the show, he seemed kind of underwhelmed with it. He was like, yeah, that was good. What now? That sort of underwhelmingness, like, if it was, and I appreciate that was his reaction, but it's never spelled out what he's going to do with that. Like, what did he Was he like, yeah, I can just go do that again every night for the rest of my life? Or, yeah,
It
maybe that's not what I wanted it to be. Maybe I should keep doing that thing that's making a real impact. But I feel like his teaching, it's highlighted enough to show that him being a teacher is important and it's making an impact. But I don't think the way that the movie implies it, I don't think he's going to take that full-time teaching job.
Yeah, I mean, and it just leaves it so strangely open-ended at the end of the movie. It doesn't give us I mean, he's back to life, cool. I mean, everybody likes it when the character gets to be alive again. But again, I think the movie would have been far more mature and nuanced if he died. If he had to appreciate it by
100%. Like maybe if before he went off to die, he kind of had some idea of what his life was going to be. But when he decided to give his life back to 22, he really he went into that prepared to die, and it should have been like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. It's again, I just think that in some ways it's that all the points there. It almost is hard to talk about and get to the real root of what exactly is not ideal about Soul in some ways. But you're understanding the frustration here, frustration with some parts of the movie that just don't, come through in the right ways.
It doesn't come all together for me, and that's sort of the core of it.
And that's why I really put it. So originally I told my brother 7 out of 10 because when I first watched it, I was like, well, it's still got a good message. And there's a couple parts that kind of pluck at your heartstrings a little bit. And I appreciate that. And I would say in a way it has more mature themes, which would lend to me personally enjoying it more. But the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, because when I watched Inside Out, which again, I don't particularly appeal to things that seem cutesy and joy, like everything you're seeing is all bright colors and yada, but it does have still has a very mature sort of theme going on in it. And it just is so well put together. I mean, Inside Out definitely got to my heartstrings. Definitely had me shed a little tear at certain points and kind of make, maybe choke up a little bit.
I think every child should watch Inside Out, especially ones around the Riley age. I think every child should watch Coco, especially around Miguel's age. I don't
think anybody needs to watch Soul to get much out of it. I mean,
I think Soul is marketed. It's a kids movie that's targeting adults.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in Pixar movies, you kind of are that sometimes, but it's.
I just like very clearly, I don't see this appealing to children.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's going to be a little over the top for them to understand. Like, how's a child going to not be? They already appreciate life, so you're not even really. I mean, you're just marketing it to a different demographic. One thing, hey, I want to actually make a point of is love the African-American representation in the movie. It's really excellent to see that. I like bringing in, jazz, making that an important thing. I love jazz music. So, I mean, that's a great thing that they did with the movie.
Yeah.
But again, I wish that the movie was better for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, like the jazz in it, like I appreciate that it doesn't just do the Coco thing where the culture is everything. It's almost the more mature thing of, this character gets to be black within black culture without it being a black movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. The movie, like he is black and his family's black and he goes to the black barber shop and he plays jazz music, which isn't it. I mean, it is. Yeah. It's rich in the culture.
Mm-hmm. But it's just a guy living his life. It doesn't it doesn't make it like this is a black movie or anything, which is great and fine.
He doesn't need to be black, and the point of the movie is not that he's black, which I think is a good thing. It's one of the good things about the movie. It's why I still rank it pretty high. I just I just think it's kind of a thematic mess.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't come through as well. Also, I still appreciate it, but it's definitely not a movie. I watched Inside Out last night. Again, it was actually probably the second time. And I'm like thinking, wow, I would actually watch this again in the future. I don't know if I'm going to go back and watch Soul again.
You mentioning the pulling on the heartstrings, this is probably the last point I want to make. In movies, sometimes there are sad moments that, and you can see they want you to cry. This is manufactured to make you cry. Pixar's great at it. First 10 seconds of Up, Bing Bong, playing the song for Mama Coco, all that jazz, Waterworks. There is that moment in this movie where
all that jazz, huh?
There is this moment in the movie where you not only get this like sort of meaningful life and fulfilling message, but you get this sort of montage of images. And it just felt like I did start to feel the feelings, but like it took me out of the movie that it was just so manufactured that it's specifically the montage of images that like it's not really used in that way within the movie in any other way. It just feels kind of forced to make the moment feel bigger than it is.
Yeah. Now, I will give a little credit, though, that they are playing back to, we did see those images before, right? He goes through like a hall of memories, and he sees a bunch of his memories, and we're looking at almost the same memories before, but before he's like, oh, look at these dumpy, bad, not great memories, or these simple, look at my life, it was nothing.
Yeah.
And you see the same memories in this new light where it's, no, my life was something. Look at these memories.
But it's sort of that pullback,
right.
It's that pullback image of like the universe where I'm just like, oh God.
Yeah.
It's that moment where I'm like, this is really beautifully animated and really deep and meaningful, and I want to like this, but God, does it feel pretentious?
Yeah. And here's what I think almost might have made that moment a little better. And Ryan, I think you're entirely right there. I think it just is so put in your face, like, here, look at all these things. If they had taken it actually literally back to the hall of memories, if he just when he's sad or moping around or whatever,
I love that.
had strolled through the hall of memories and went back to look at his memories and then saw them all in a new light, that'd be more of a showing us, not telling us kind of moment where, okay, we're seeing him literally go look at those memories again, not just bam, 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 bam. Here's the memories in a flash thing before. So it might have made it a little more genuine, might have meant a little more. So
differences, genuine.
Yeah. So I think I
think I have more to say on this, and this is where I kind of want to say, if we end up getting listeners, I'd like to hear some opinions on it. We haven't set up an email yet, but if you have questions, go ahead and get those rolling. I think I'm going to try to put these up on YouTube. So if we get YouTube comments, leave questions there. If we get a email set up, we can start asking for questions there. But just I'm genuinely curious. I know most people love this movie. Like my best friend and I, we watched it together, and they walked out of it saying it's top tier Pixar to them. And I kind of want to hear more broad. After hearing our arguments, I want to hear what people have to say that just disagree with us, or even people that agree with us. I want to know, like, are we alone?
Yeah, or even maybe clean up some of my thoughts. I mean, I know I wasn't probably perfectly on point with everything I was saying as I was trying to work through it a little bit in the discussion, but I'd like to hear maybe somebody agree with us or disagree and take what we put here and let us know what everybody else is thinking. I agree with that.
All right. So I think that's it. So signing off the R&R.
Showtime.
Showtime, yes. This is Ryan.
This is Robert.
See you next time.